So
Okay, there we go.
there
I
was no
see.
point in, all right, Alan, when you call the meeting to order, could you take the roll?
Yes, okay, I call the meeting of the Nantucket Roads and Right-of-Way Committee to order for February 16th. And I'll call the roll. Lee Saperstein,
Here,
Bill Greeter,
Here.
Phil Smith,
Here.
Nat Lowell.
Here.
Let me get the full view here. Oops.
Rick Atherton.
Rick Atherton.
Yeah, I'm here, Alan.
Okay, good. And is there anyone I'm missing?
Yeah, yourself, Alan Reinhardt, Chair.
Oh, and yeah,
Leslie.
Alan here.
You're missing Leslie.
Sorry about.
Is Leslie here?
Yeah, we're missing Leslie, and I just to be sure. I have the wrong view here. I want to speak. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Gallery view.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can see everybody. All right, first item of business, public comment. Mary?
Hi, so I think you've seen me in meetings occasionally, and I was looking at some of the meeting minutes and agendas, and I realized that as a group that's really looking at places all over the island, and in particular roads and rights of way, you have an interest, or I hope you do, in the coastal resilience plan. And so I wanted to invite you to submit comments, to participate in that process, because I think the projects that you're working on could definitely be affected by what we're trying to do in the coastal resilience plan. And in particular, one of the things that strikes me is that all of the big places, you know, the Pacific Club, the Whaling Museum, the dump, the airport, you know, the sewer beds, everybody knows about those and that they are threatened potentially by sea level rise and flooding and erosion. But what are the places that we don't pay as much attention to? You know, the railroad bed, the harbor walk idea. How are those going to be impacted, not just by climate change and sea level rise, but by what we plan to do to mitigate climate change and sea level rise? And so I wanted to reach out to you and just say that I hope that you will be able to represent some of those lesser known places and to make the plans that you're working on part of that discussion in the coastal resilience plan, so that we don't work at cross purposes.
Correct.
Essentially. Also, if you have any questions about the coastal resilience plan, I'm happy to answer those to the best of my ability.
Okay, Mary, we will comment, but we've just admitted one more person.
Oh, hi, Ed.
Hello,
Welcome.
Alan.
Great. So Mary, let me address your comment. Two things. First, there was a what was it, a survey or something that the CRAC did, participated in that. The Civic League, of course, I'm sure you saw that, the program, the forum that we did on that on Saturday last. I also left a message with Vince Murphy. After our last meeting, I realized, I think it was at your behest, that Vince has a lot lot about Chapter 91. And that's one of the essential things for much of the work that we do. So,
And I spoke to him about that, and that was another reason why I wanted to come on today. He said he wasn't available to do that. He has another commitment. And I'm certainly not the expert on the technical details of Wetlands Acts and Chapter 91. But what he told me was that Chapter 91 is primarily a state law. And so he's less capable of addressing that because it's not within, you know, his jurisdiction, if you will. So I may have been not giving you the best advice when I asked you to reach out to him, except that perhaps it's one more step on the path to finding the right place to go. Yeah, and I hope that you will get the information that you need. But Vince is probably not going to be the ultimate source for it.
Right, I understand that, and I realized that Vince, his office is over at the um,
The natural
front
resources.
at beach, yeah, over by Jetty's Beach, where Jeff Carlson is also. So there is definitely a connection there as far as Chapter 91 information. And I think Rick might have some information also about Chapter 91 here as well.
Alan, before we jump into that, I'm going to suggest we stay with the agenda. But may I suggest that we have an agenda item for our next meeting with Vince and Mary invited to talk about coastal erosion and the impact on access.
Okay, I'll make a note of that, and we'll see what I will try and put something together that will include them. We'll see. In my message, I asked if Vince could attend today, and he's got a meeting out on Sheep Pond Road where they're trying to resolve that situation up there where the road washed away over the weekend. So, okay, let's minutes. We have the minutes from our January 19th meeting. Any errors, omissions, corrections anyone wants to point to? Yes, Phil?
I can't believe I caught this, but on the second page, fourth paragraph, first line, he also asked of the select board, I think it's if the select board.
Oh, I see. Good, yes.
Phil, what's the correction?
Changing of to if.
Yeah,
You see
that
that?
again on page,
Second page,
yeah.
fourth paragraph, first line.
Okay, I've got it. I won't pull it up now, but I will fix it before I go, before I leave the computer.
Good. Okay. Any other comments on the minutes from our January meeting? Seeing none, let me take a roll call vote. Or no,
No,
Move to
motion
accept,
to approve from
Move
Bill.
move to
Is it?
accept with the corrections by
Second,
Hawkeye Phil.
seconded.
Okay. Bill made the motion and Ed seconds. So let me go down the list here. Lee,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
and Ed,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So those minutes are approved with the correction. Okay, I just wanted to update you briefly about the one of our projects, the Nantucket Greenway and Trail System that's been on our projects list for years. The Land Bank has recently published a West End map covering everything from basically the edge of town west out to Matticat. It lists all the conservation properties and shows the trails and where they connect on that map. So it's another step in the toward the goal of developing this Nantucket Greenway system. I mentioned at our last meeting, the Land Bank was also in the process. We've laid out a cross island trail going from Hoyks Hollow to Settlers Landing in Matticat at the end of North Cambridge Street. It's I believe it's about 23 and a half, 24 miles, the cross island. And at the Board of Selectmen meeting, I believe it was a week ago, they did get a parking easement in the roadway at Hoyks Hollow for that. So that project is moving along. ultimately, the idea is to have a map or all the walking trails that are out on the island of all the different conservation groups and the town. So I just wanted to announce that. That's been a long-term project, and slowly, I guess, as these projects, they are long-term. That's why I keep putting them on the agendas. Questions or comments about the Cross Island Trail System, the so-called Nantucket Greenway? Yes, Ed?
Very quick one. You say the land bank's got a more detailed west end map of that trail system?
Yes, and it's available in the office on Broad Street.
So it's actually in paper format, not just on us.
Yeah, it's in paper format. I had a copy of it somewhere, but I was going to hold it up for you. But yes, it is available. It is on paper. It's been published, and it's available at the Land Bank office.
Is the office actually open at the land bank?
Yes. Yeah, the Land Bank office is open. You go in mainly because the lawyers are dropping off checks and stuff, and they have to communicate. But so you go into the alcove there, and there's a table set up, but the staff is available, and the maps are right there at the door at the entrance.
Okay, because I get the records once a week, but electronically. Okay.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions on that item? Okay, next item, Chapter 91, public access issues. We've talked at some length about the goal of trying to get the town, I guess it would be the county, because anyway, the town to have those concentrated in one place. And that's been sort of an ongoing project. At our last meeting, we discussed, let me see here. Oh, the goal. The goal here is to try and find public access points and mark them if they aren't marked, and to see if there are other ones that we might make a recommendation to the town for as far as taking. All right, so with regard to that, it's part of our project for the Harbor Walk. And one of the thoughts was to focus on a couple of properties. As we found, the records are not as easy as we might have been led to believe that they are to acquire. And I would suggest that two of the properties we might want to start with are first the ones on Washington Street Extension, number 80, I believe it's number 80, Washington Street, where they did extensive bulkhead repair within the last 2 years, and there is still no public access around that property. That would be a good one to start with. The other one would be on Commercial Wharf. I believe it's number 11 Commercial Wharf. And there is an issue that property, by the way, is on the market. And the issue there is at low tide, because the deck hangs way out, you cannot walk around it. It encroaches into the way there. So those would be two places we could possibly start to see what the, if there is a Chapter 91 permit there. The other one, I drove down Fulling Mill Road, and at the end of Fulling Mill Road, that's where people used to scallop. And
Yes.
the property has been developed. There's a big giant house down there, and there you can you can drive down, but you can't turn around. You have to back out. They've made it so if you were walking down Fulling Mill Road, you can walk out on the beach. But as far as the public access there, so that would be another place we might see if there is any Chapter 91 opportunity, let's put it that way, to create something there. So, yes, Rick?
Just one other one we might keep on the radar is the property next to the White Elephant going up towards the Coast Guard station has been before Concom many times. They've talked about the Chapter 91 issues, and it's an awkward way to get from the walkway in front of the White Elephant to that property. And Chapter 91 might be very helpful in alleviating that difficulty, Alan, so.
Right. Yeah, I talked at some length with Ed, who I'll get to in just a moment. And
But Dan,
that property was for sale. There's actually a little beach there. And I did mention it to the land bank that would be a suitable beach property, but apparently there's some question. Ed, can you weigh in on the situation there?
This is the information that I am aware of right now. It's the property's under contract, and it's been under contract for quite some time. The holdup, of course, is a Chapter 91 license. There were other contingencies. I think they've been through Concom already. They've gotten permission, I believe, to pick up the big house and move it to the Easton Street side of the property and create a development lot right there on the water. The Chapter 91 is a holdup right now, as I'm understanding. And again, this is not my buyer. I had someone that was interested in this property, and someone else has a buyer for it, and I know who it is. But in any event, yes, the Chapter 91 license has been taking quite some time, apparently. I mean, this is, probably maybe even a year, well over a year, let's put it that way, 1.5 years maybe. So I'm not sure where it stands right now.
Ed, do you know the number on Easton Street?
46 maybe. I mean, if you could see that map, if I could see that map, I could tell you right away that you just showed a minute ago.
46.
It's 40, yeah, it is 46.
It's right at the end of the White Elephant property there.
Right
And
here.
the beach is actually accreted there. It's actually become a larger beach than they had before even. I mean, it's becoming it would be a perfect spot, as a land bank property or something like that, but.
Right.
Alan, could I follow up as well?
Yes, Rick?
So one of the questions that comes up here in all of these is who's representing the town's interest
Mm-hmm.
in
Right.
these Chapter 91 license discussions. And I've often had the sense when I listen to some Concom discussions that the answer is elusive, let's put it that way. And I think in this case, it's important for someone to represent that interest, to sort of make that contiguous part of our harbor walk readily available, Alan. I mean, the land bank might well be helpful here. You've got some staff and, you know who to talk to, but I'm not sure Jeff Carlson's got so much on his plate, it doesn't seem to happen there. So without that input, you never know quite what the license is going to do to be helpful to the community.
All right. Well, once I found that property it was under agreement or had been negotiated and so on. I did go to the land bank and I asked them to check in to see what the status of it was and so on. And oops. And so the Jesse and Eric at the land bank are following up just to see what they can find out about the status of that. But I agree. I think that would be a good, regardless of what happens to that property, there will be a need for a Chapter 91 review. So that's a good point, Rick, that
So, Alan, Lee here. If-
yeah, hi, Lee.
As I pointed out earlier before we started recording, the Nantucket Civic League is planning a forum on Chapter 91. And I know that Rick just sent out an email talking about prospective speakers. So I'll tip my hat to him.
Rick, can you comment on that?
I can. So after we talked about this at the Civic League with Charlie and Peter in terms of how to schedule our forums. And after listening to the presentation to the Town Association by the chairman of the Historical Commission, it seemed to me it's topical. And, we've been trying to move this along. So I called our CZM rep, Steve McKenna. I think many of you probably know Steve. He's been very helpful over here over the years. And Steve indicated he would be willing to participate in a forum, a discussion about Chapter 91, and was reaching out to see who in the Chapter 91 department, I'm saying, putting that in quotes, wherever the hell that is, would join him. And so we could have two state people who really know a lot more about this than probably any of us ever thought we knew. And if we could get Mr. Carlson to be available at the same time, I think we'd have a real, at least a nucleus of what Chapter 91 assets to the town are available to us and how we access them.
So have we set a date yet for that forum?
Well, we started talking about a date, but when I talked to Steve, we initially were talking about a Saturday. They're not Saturday guys. They've got kids. So we're trying to find a date that would work for the two state people, but we haven't got far enough along to know how we can mesh their availability with our own desires to get a forum together, Alan.
Right. Do you think Hillary would be someone to include in that forum?
Well, we'll have to talk about that. That's really a Civic League issue if they're going to be the sponsor. If we had, co-sponsors like with the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee or others, it would help build a larger coalition to get at the same issue. And we all have, I think, common interests here. And, her interest when she talked about the specifics at the Town Association meeting about Harbor Place. And I'm not sure we want to focus just on one area. But the example we just talked about with that lot, if no one's paying attention, the party that is paying attention is the person who wants to buy the property.
Exactly.
And they will do what they need to do to protect their interests, which may not be, frankly, the same as ours.
Sure. Ed?
Somewhat along the same matter, but Alan, when the land bank purchased Mickey Rowland's property, are you familiar whether they had a Chapter 91 license for that property?
I don't know off the top of my head. I believe that they did, but I'm not I can't swear to it.
Okay, what I'm being told by the person who's listing the property right next door, the one you were talking about with the deck,
Yes.
is that they have that does have a chapter 91 license from years ago. And I'm suspecting it was probably after the No Name Storm when they had to do a lot of work back in those days. A lot of people went for their chapter 91s. And it might have even been had some involvement with insurance at the time. I don't know. Or something about insurance going forward, I should say. But I've been told by just a minute ago from a text that those properties down there do have chapter 91 licenses. So it'd be interesting to find out, I guess, the path of the chapter 91, the way, basically, I guess you could say.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, these licenses have a specific, as I understand, they have a specific layout of where the public can transverse the properties, right?
Right. And of course, that goes right to the heart of the matter that we've been talking about is, where do you find these licenses? As opposed to going up to Boston, making an appointment sort of thing.
Yeah, because you
Phil?
want to lay out to walk in to direct, like this path across the island, you want a path around the harbor and you want to have a specific, not only the access to it, but the layout as you cross property to property.
And exactly. And one other thing I should mention, and Lee knows more about this than I do, but I believe in the chapter 91, maybe it's the regulations. The town is supposed to be notified when a chapter 91 license is being, I assume amended or requested. And they're supposed to send a letter to the planning board or the board of selectmen or somebody. So the town, assuming that's being followed and that's correct, we should be on notice whenever anybody wants to modify their chapter 91 licenses. But it's a matter of making sure such correspondence gets to the right person,
Rick, it's Lee. I would have to double re-research this, but my understanding with dim memory is that the notification goes to the Conservation Commission. The Concom, when reviewing conditions to be applied, says you've got to have a chapter 91 license. But the upshot of that is if all is done appropriately, the license gets attached to the deed and that's the only file location for it. Now, on newer ones, Jeff has been keeping a copy of the license in some sort of paper file. We need to know more from Jeff.
Right, it does get attached to the deed, correct?
Yeah. Phil?
There's a couple of basic questions, and I spent some time on the Massachusetts website for chapter 91. I really couldn't get an answer. When were people first required to have a chapter 91 license? Do you know? I mean, are we talking hundreds of years ago or like 20 years ago?
Phil, I would have to research that as well, but I'm suspecting toward the end of the 19th century or early 20th century.
So does that mean that everybody on the waterfront has a chapter 91 license?
Oh, the chapter 91 license is for permission to take a structure from an existing land-based structure across the wetted surface. So it's not a license for the wetted surface, but it's a license for any obstruction to the wetted surface. A walkway, a pier, a deck.
So if, for example, this Washington Street extension that you mentioned, Alan, this was fairly recent work, right?
Again, Phil, please.
That Washington Street extension, Alan, that you mentioned?
That's got a lot of orders of condition attached to it. Leslie and I looked at the deeds. There's something like 8 condos, each with an A, B, C, etc. suffix to the street address. And they all had orders of condition, but a chapter 91 license wasn't one of them.
So I guess the question is, if you don't have, if a property owner does not have a chapter 191 license, what happens?
It's up to the state to enforce, and they don't come very frequently. That I do remember Jeff telling me.
But you're at risk, I guess, when you try to sell your property then, right?
That's where it comes up, yes. Alan and I are very familiar with the property next door to the Pulpus Cemetery, which I think is, the Pulpus is 264. I think we're talking about either 260 or 262 Pulpus Road, which was under contract and then it fell apart precisely because they didn't have their Chapter 91 license.
Yeah, and usually if somebody doesn't
That's
raise
Wayne's
these
neck
issues,
parcel.
the attorney for a buyer or the owner knows all about this stuff and, sort of gets his own deal for his client. That's his job. And if the town isn't alert, that's how the license is updated.
Exactly. Yes, Ed?
In the Chapter 91 licenses actually go back to the Waterways Act of 1866.
Right.
But a lot of what it was used for at that time was public access, which we went into in a number of ways, to the water itself. I mean, it wasn't a structure thing. I think it evolved into the structures in the right of way, maybe at a later date. I'm not 100% sure about that, but or how to maintain structures in the waterways, so to speak, or tidelands. But I think the licenses themselves go back to 1866 when they started really licensing them.
Alan, one more comment.
Right.
It's instructive, I think. And I sort of got this from my fellow select member, Bobby DaCosta. And as part of the Great Harbor Yacht Club, legal machinations and all the settlements and wherever they came out, their Chapter 91, I believe, required a travel lift and other things that he was always concerned were not being complied with. But when the yacht club was going through all that, there were a lot of people like the Land Council paying close attention to that Chapter 91 license. And that's where we all like to talk about going up and down those stairs in front of the Washington Street condos, up and down that dock. But it's a good example of somebody asking for and receiving something in the Chapter 91 for the community. The restrooms in the Dreamland are also required, I'm pretty sure we can find out, by a Chapter 91 license. Otherwise, they might not be available to the public.
Yes, Rick is absolutely right about Dreamland. And it goes back to when Dreamland was rebuilt, because it was so substantially rebuilt. The town looked into all the licensure. And Dreamland sits on filled tidal land. So the reason for the public access to the restrooms is, one, the rebuilding, two, the filled tidal land, and three, the jurisdiction coming into play because it was such a substantial rebuild.
To Rick's point, I just looked up on the internet, Greater Harbor Yacht Club, Chapter 91. And it came up, there was an article in the Inky, June 6, 2008. And the headlines were Town Holds Greater Harbor Yacht Club Feet to the Fire. So I just went to look that article up. Unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit more. The Inky has changed its server. So you can find, and I brought this up to him, you can put in a search on history like I just did, see that link, but the link goes to a server no longer in existence.
Right.
So what Mary Ann and Josh said, I'm going to try it. I got to go to the archives of the Inky, the new archives, and all that stuff is supposed to be rolled over.
Right.
So it would be helpful at least to get that article that has the wherewithal in 2008. It may in fact list without having the thing in hand.
Bill, Lee here, two suggestions.
Yep.
One is get a digital subscription, which I don't recommend. The other is that the Inky may be on file at the Athenaeum.
Well, this is their files. So my point is, if you search something on the web, you used to be able to go and it would bring up act.net and bring up that article. You didn't have to be a member or anything. It's just general public. So now that
Yeah.
server is offline, those links are going to disappear and go away.
Exactly. Let me just interrupt here. By the way, I've been zooming in and out. I keep losing contact and so on. So there must be something going on in the ether out there. The Chapter 91 license goes back to, I believe it's 1846, when the, what do they call it? What was created. And that's when the licensing started. The regulations themselves, of course, go back to the 1640s, I believe it was, and so on. But it deals with public access from 1846 onward. It deals with the public's right to pass and repass. And that's where we get the fishing, fouling, and navigating access part of it. Ed, you had a comment earlier?
Well, a question and a comment, I guess. I'm wondering if these licenses, how long they're good for. Are they like a lot of the licenses that you get that are good to expire in 30 years?
Good question. I don't know the answer. Oh, yes, Rick.
Well, just briefly, the older licenses, some of them had very long tails. I'm not sure if they were 100 years or almost forever. The
Mhm.
more recent ones have maturity dates and have to be rolled over. And I'm not sure where that divide is, Ed, but I think the older the license, the
Well,
less
true.
attention was paid to that issue.
Well, at one time you used to be able to search things back for, I don't know, I think Nantucket did it 99 years or something, but it was, in perpetuity theoretically. But then I think at some point in law, they changed these licenses, and I'm not sure about Chapter 91 licenses, but other licenses and restrictions, subdivision restrictions, et cetera, that they would expire in 30 years. And in other words, they were trying to set a tail and, and I'm wondering if the owners on some of these licenses may have expired. I'm not sure.
My
'Cause the
understanding is
norm was 30
they do
years.
expire, Ed.
What would you say?
My understanding is that they do expire, which is why, well, I may be confusing things here, but when whoever owns the docks out at Straight Wharf, which may be Nantucket Island Resorts, when they were rebuilding them, they had to get new licenses.
Oh, because the No Name Storm was pretty much 30 years ago this
Yep,
Halloween.
91.
So if a lot of people got them post that, they might be a lot of them about to expire.
I don't think they expire. I think they have to be, updated
Up
and
there, yeah.
different things. They used to put Chapter 91 stuff in the paper and the notice stuff. You know what I mean, Alan? Whatever the.
Well, yeah, they still do, I believe.
I haven't seen any in years, but that doesn't mean I haven't, missed it. But I remember that distinctively, seeing that occasionally.
Yeah, they're in the legal notices, but
Yeah,
there haven't been a lot of them. Every paper has 5 or 6 Concom notices, but it may be weeks or even months before I see a Chapter 91 notice.
Speaking of notices, I'm not sure if anyone noticed that last week in the public notices, remember the James Street pedestrian easement and all that? That was advertised in the I&M. It's the acceptance for the public, the right of way, and also the one big beach bit across the front that was advertised as well. So that kind of closes
Yeah.
the loop on that thing anyway.
Yeah.
Ed,
I,
thanks to Nat Lowell, I'm on the Real Estate Assessment Committee, and we went through that several meetings ago with the understanding that it would be approved.
Good.
Made the recommendation to the select board, and then so the advertisement is the public hearing before the select board.
Right. Gotcha.
exactly.
Don't get me started on that one, right, Lee?
Yeah. I know. I saw that in the paper. Back to the Great Harbor Yacht Club. Both Rick and I were on the select board at that time when that was going on. And it was very clear that they needed to have public access. And as a result of that, you notice it says there are markers all the way around that, or around and through that property, saying public.
Walkway.
Yeah, there's little signs there.
Yeah, there. And of course, the new place where the Lobster Pot Gallery used to be on Easy Street, next to what's now Charlie Noble's, there is a pedestrian way, and they use the same signs there to indicate that that is in fact a public way.
Not to prolong this discussion, but the Great Harbor Yacht Club is close to my house, so we occasionally walk out there. If one follows the walkway all the way around, one ends up on the public beach below Washington Street, and there's no way out of it except to retrace your steps back around the Great Harbor Yacht Club, or start clambering over somebody's private property, because there's either a bulkhead or a little rise, and then it's all private property. You eventually get to the condo where you can't get around it.
Right. Ed?
Two quick things. I don't want to belabor this either. There's also another right of way that, the new structure that was built across from the Easy Street Basin when John Wraith built there. You'll notice there's another one with a
The
walkway
walkway there.
that goes up through there.
Yeah.
There's also, from the power of Google, apparently there's licenses that are between 30 and 99 years. And I'm suspecting the older ones are 99 years and the newer ones are probably 30-year tail, or after a certain date, there were a 30-year tail kind of put on them. So.
Okay, well, this is, it's a fascinating subject, and if indeed the Civic League can put together a forum on this. I don't know if you saw the recent forum we did with the coastal erosion and so on. That was, I think, one of the best forums that, it was very informative. The speakers were right, knew their material and all that sort of thing. So, all right, well, we'll continue to find out information about Chapter 91. The land bank has, of course, dealt with this. When we put the dock in at our Bachman property, which is down next to Otison's, we put a sign on the side of the dock claiming Chapter 91. Lee and I had to go out to the Swain's Neck property. That was the one that didn't sell because he put a bridge in over the stream that connects Pulpus Harbor east and west, and he didn't get a permit for it, and that canceled that deal. The new owner did get a Chapter 91 license, and Lee and I went out to inspect that, and there is in fact a sign tacked up on that bridge, although that's all private property there. All right, so we'll continue, see what we can find out, because this is really key to what we do as a committee, the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, dealing with public access, and particularly public access to the water. So anything else on that item? Yes, Ed?
One last thing, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the attorney that was involved with that property might have been Steve Cohen. It might be interesting to have a guest that knows something from a legal standpoint about Chapter 91 licensing.
Oh, great. You know who the authority used to be was Arthur Reed. I would assume he's still an authority on that.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
And
Yeah.
yes, and Arthur was very involved with that particular property, 2 owners ago.
There's a couple of things that Arthur's been involved with on Commercial Wharf recent years. There was a case down there. I think Kevin Dale was on it as well on the other. I forgot. I can't remember exactly, but when you go down there and you got number 21 there with the little brick sort of parking space, there's a Jeep parked there. I think the next building was the one that was the subject that had some kind of connection to 72 Main Street. Something like that, like part of the rental connection to that.
Right.
And Arthur was on one side and Kevin was on the other of that. I don't remember every little detail, but I think Kevin represented the the property owner, and I believe that Arthur represented the I guess the opponent or whatever you want to call it. Arthur definitely would be my number one choice, is to have someone talk about that isn't an agenda or using Chapter 91 for some new leverage against people or something like that I'm hearing too much about that around here lately. So it would be probably pretty good time to have him come on here before the vaccine, I'm sure. I don't even think that matters anymore. I think we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, I know.
So
no, I think that's an excellent idea.
I can't remember the name of that project. It was only 3 years ago, and my head, I can't remember it, but it was definitely those two guys. Definitely.
I remember years ago speaking with Arthur about the proprietors' roads, and Arthur was very knowledgeable about the proprietors' roads and the evolution of those, and the question that this was several years, a number of years ago. So, okay, anything else? Anything else on Chapter 91? Potential takings list. We've talked about Wind Street, and we talked about it at our last meeting again. The last official word that we had was when Kara Bosnowski was the DPW director and also an advisor to our committee. And her comment was that there was a plan to put, I'm not sure if it was sewer or must have been some utility. It wasn't water, I don't believe, but to put must have been a sewer line through there, which would have required, wouldn't have required a taking, but she mentioned at that point that there was consideration of taking Wind Street. We also know that Billy Cassidy, who owned the private section, the paved section of Wind Street, was willing to give it to the town, but he also wanted the town to take Barnabas and Woodbury Lane. And at the time, there was some question on the part of the town as to whether they wanted to take those. And since then, it's
not going to happen. You know what the problem was, Alan, with that?
That was Bruce Poor, I believe, not Billy Cassidy.
Yeah, it was Bruce Poor, not Cassidy.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, Alan, it's okay. It's all good. So the problem with the Woodbury, when that got brought up, you're right about Kara. She was here then, and that was a big discussion, was the sneaky parking. So you got the catch-22 of, okay, I'm going to Hyannis for the weekend. I'm going to park on Woodbury, and no one says anything, and private road. Then if it's a public road, then the people that live there want parking, but they don't want people to park there. So now they got to enforce 2-hour parking in a little place like that because people are parking there to drive, to walk to the boat. So there was all those kind of back and forths. It wasn't about maintenance, because that road will last forever, the way they did that with Belgium, well, not Belgian block, but those paver brick things. But it's parking, there's a lot of width there. You can park a lot of cars on those roads, and that was the big question. They thought it would change everything and this and that. And people wanted enforcement, and then the town didn't want to do it. It was an Amelia Drive situation for a different reason. So that was what I recall.
Right.
that.
So the question then becomes, we as a committee have advocated the taking of Wynn Street,
Yeah.
mainly to provide a link between the bike paths.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
every time that comes up, it gets to be a little, it gets to be a sticky issue as to the taking of the private part of it. Now, again, the dirt part of it is a public way. So you would think there could be a way to juggle that and so on, although it's pretty narrow.
It is, Alan? Is it?
Yes.
It is? The dirt part's public and the,
Nat, this is
Okay.
Lee.
Yes.
Yes, the
Yes.
dirt portion is public.
Right. It's the paved portion that Bruce Moore did that was the private way, the private section of that. So again, it seems to be an issue that keeps sort of fading back and forth. And I guess the question really is, do we want to make a case or a stronger case, let's say, to the select board for the taking of Wynn Street?
I'm going to respond very quickly in the affirmative. Yes. What I suggest is that we write to the select board, reminding them that our advice on Wynn Street, and if necessary, Friendship, is still appropriate. And we would remind them that they should be looking at this afresh.
All right. And you mentioned Friendship Lane. That's when we also recommended the problem with Friendship
it's
Lane.
really Somerset, though. It's not Friendship. That's technically Somerset, Alan. The dirt.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're correct. Yeah. So Somerset is that the dirt portion.
Yeah.
And the issue for years was that one of the residents along that section, who happens to be the editor of the Inquirer and Mirror, didn't want that. But we contacted her. This must have been 3 or 4, maybe longer ago. We spoke with Andrew Vorse, spoke with Marianne, and at that point, Marianne said, "Fine, pave it."
Well, but yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of development there, so I think that's part of the decision. There's going to be some improvements, so
Right.
on
Ed,
that road.
So Alan, I'm going to refine my comment. I think our first letter should be to Wynn Street only.
I would agree. I think we should, yeah.
And then we need to do our homework, because I think Rob McNeil has said that there's some drainage and flooding problems that the town needs to address. Sorry, flooding and drainage at Friendship in Somerset.
Right.
We would be well advised to get his advice on what he would be saying to the select board.
Yes, I'll put that on my list. I try to have a conversation with Rob. I try for once a week, but I'll put that on my list the next time I speak with him to get more information there. Ed?
I think part of Mary Ann's loosening up on her stance about Somerset was the fact that there's a subdivision plan in place, I believe called Bittersweet Lane on her father's property next door. And there'll probably be some improvements that'll be required coming down there.
Mhm.
And also, I know someone who bought across the street there on the same side as Mary Ann, but across the street from, the garages down in there. And they were
Yeah.
told by the family that owned all that land down there, that family told them when they bought their property that they owned the road.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
They
true.
do, they do grade the road, I have to say, as if they did, but
Well, they used to anyway. Part of the issue with that section of the road is that there's part of Prospect Hill Cemetery down there. And the Jewish cemetery is part of that. There are actually several different sections in that cemetery. And it is, boy, I've been down there when they were doing a funeral service over in the cemetery, and I couldn't imagine all those cars trying to get through, the mess that it is down there. So, all right, two separate issues, Somerset Road and Wind Street. And I agree with Lee. I think that we, we'll take them separately. I'll discuss those before our next meeting with Rob McNeil, see if he can shed some light on what the town's thoughts are there. Unless, Nat, do you know anything?
No, the only thing I can say is the same thing I kind of said the last time. You've got George's family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they're gonna do in the front there, and that's R20 over there. I look at Wind Street, just for everyone's, like, this is been going on for almost 20 years, this question. In my opinion, you got to look at that section of the road like we did First Way. It was all grown in, a big mess. Everybody was scared to pave it. We can't do it. We're going to have a cut through. Kids are going to be run over. I have been through every possible thing with First Way on this committee, by the way, Alan. You remember when Ronnie Roberts and they were all coming, no one wanted anything. Now they love it.
Yeah.
Because it's done speed humps. They fixed all the spaghetti lines from Cow Pond disaster sewer lines, right? They put that fence, which, I mean, everybody can pick something apart and say something wrong or right, but either way, I think it's great. Okay. And that's how I see First Way someday. There's a lot of right of way there, Lee, I think. But it's all bottle dump there. The trees are all grown in, but there's room to do stuff. And eventually, I personally see it as a small 16-foot wide, maybe 18 at the most, with a bike path. Or, just one way and leave it alone and let the bikes just ride on the road like they would, because it's not going to have a lot of traffic if it was one way. It has to be one way in from Milk Street. That's not Hummock Pond Road, that's Milk Street.
Right.
And everybody thinks it's Hummock, but it's not. But that would be the answer. Now, the new owners of John, the former principal's house, I told you I met them, and we had a chat about it. And that hedge, if they were willing to cut it down or move it a little bit or do something, then you got some vision. But it's still awful to look to the left, Alan. You pull out of there. I'm telling you, you know what I mean? Like, that
I know
is
exactly what you mean.
horrible. Yeah. There's no sight line at all when you pull out of that road. I don't like going out of there in the daytime because you can't see anything.
Exactly.
So I like the idea of a one-way, and I think the neighbors would probably be in favor of it for bike access and safety, just in general. Because once you pave something, it is going to change the character of how people drive and where they go. And so I don't know. that's my take on it.
Good. All right. Well, as I say, I'll get more information about, what the DPW's position might be on those two ways. Yeah.
Alan Lee, it's a quick addition. Add Ken Bogran to the people with whom you speak.
I'm sorry.
Add Ken Bogran as somebody whom you consult.
Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Listen-
I'll add him to my list here of people. Ed?
And through the chair to Nat, actually, and this is a Somerset, which I think wins the priority definitely, and probably for a number of reasons. But Somerset, Chester Barrett's family really owns a large stretch of that.
Exactly.
Is there any discussion with the Barrett, with their family and see how they feel about that?
Okay, so good question, Ed. Steve Cohen is their attorney. And this just goes back a few years with this conversation, but the road's not wide enough. So something's gonna have to happen. They're gonna have to give up some land. I don't know what the layout is, but I think that they, understand that, it's gotta get improved. There has to be some give and take. So, Steve's aware of the decision that was made there, but I think the road is slightly out of the layout as well, too. It's kind of,
I think you're correct. It is.
I believe that was something that came up at the meeting, that the road needs to be sort of moved over a little bit and whatever, so I think that section of the road is going to take care of itself a little bit with some,
Yeah.
I mean, the water on Friendship issue is not, people think it's all coming from Somerset. It really isn't. It's the paved part of Friendship it's got berms. The water is coming down the road and just, staying there.
The drainage was poorly designed.
It's not, there's not enough. The leach pits are probably full of sand and, there needs to be more of them.
Yeah.
So,
It is runoff from that whole area there. So.
yeah. So anyway.
Okay, anything else on that item? All right, as I say, I'll follow up on that, see what Ken Bogrand and Rob McNeil and whatever else I can find out about that. Yes, Lee.
Yeah, Alan again, Lee.
Mhm.
If we send a letter to the select board, we'll need a motion of the committee. So it sounds to me, when you have more information, we might then contemplate something formal.
Okay, yes, indeed. No, for sure. Yeah, that definitely is the process we would do. We would discuss it to the vote and have a draft of what we want to, of what we're requesting. So good. Okay, anything else on that item? Any old, new, or other business or member comments? No.
Oh, yeah.
Bill, yes.
Ken's not here, but I heard from some folks, the town has sent encroachment notices to Washington Ave.
Right.
And surprise, surprise, shock and dismay that occurred as far as, that's town property? So it's too bad that they aren't as aggressive in joining the fight for other things, but all of a sudden, I think he's gotten several counter letters. So it remains to be seen where that's all going.
Yeah, well, I would anticipate that, well, we know what the issues are, it is a 50-foot roadway, and, people think of the road as being, they own right up to the edge of the road. And so anyway, That's the job that Ken has. He has to deal with all that sort of stuff. So, good. Okay, anything else to come before the committee this afternoon? Seeing none, I declare we are at the end of our agenda and that the
Thank you.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Alan, very much.
Hey,
Great.
Nat, did you get my email?
Which,
Okay,
give me a
We have a
refresher.
second.
Bill and Nat, I'm about to end recording. Since we've
Okay.
adjourned, you can keep talking, but I don't think you're gonna be recorded.
Don't we have to second that, whatever?
No, I can declare that